Welcome to the conclusion of our look at calculating the return on your investment when mounting solar to a metal roof. Last time we talked about some of the reasons why metal roofing is superior to other types of roofing and the different common mounting options. Today, Mark Gies, Director of Solar Business at S5, will be joining us to discuss some of the ways ROI is calculated to determine if adding solar to your roof is a sound investment. He'll also show off some of the tax incentives currently available that you may be able to take advantage of. Let's welcome Mark to the conversation. Mark, you've got a great perspective here on ROI. Tell us a little bit about it. Tell us a bit about this topic.
Okay, thanks, Patrick, and thanks, Greg. I love math, so I just love talking about finances of solar. Let's summarize first. So from your discussion, Greg, my big two takeaways are that if you go with a metal roof instead of other type of roof, you can save money on an install. And then if you're using rail versus railless with a railless system, which is our PV kit, you can also save money. And then there's some additional risk of, if you aren't using a metal roof, that someday that you may actually have to do repair or actually maybe even re-roofing with your solar system still intact underneath and all the costs associated with that, which is part of the cost of the system. The best way to look at the financials and the rewards of a system like a solar system is to use cash flow analysis. And that's very common in the industry when an installer will come and propose a system on somebody's roof. They usually do a cash flow analysis to show the benefits of it. That's a really good way of showing the benefits of this type of investment, where you put money in and then through the lifetime of this asset, the solar system, you're saving money and you're making money along the way. So a cash flow analysis is a very good way to do that. So when you think of a cash flow analysis, you've got to think of all the cash flow ins and outs over the years. And for solar systems, we look at like 30 years are typically to be modeled. So the upfront cost is a big part of it. And then as well, if you have any maintenance costs that you're projecting that you may guess you may have over the 30 years, you need to model that in. That's very unscientific, but people do that. And then on the cash in, like where am I making the money? That's all on your electrical savings. So the amount you save by having a solar system is really what your cash coming in. And then what you have to do is just kind of marry that across time. And there's two types of cash flow analysis. One is a simple payback where you're just looking at the cash coming in, figuring out when is my break-even point, and then at the end of it all, how much do I have? How much am I better off? As well, people tend to use discounted cash flow metrics, like a net present value is one, internal rate of return is another. That's just a way of measuring financial benefits of investments. So we're going to be doing that. So we're going to look at loosely our own system that we put on in our North Texas manufacturing plant last year, which is 200 kilowatts, in addition to a system we already had in place, but we're going to really look at that 200 kilowatts. And we're going to first just look at it from just the cost of the solar and how that pans out over the years. Then we're going to throw in the federal incentives, and then we're going to look at these cost savings or if it's going to be more cost if we didn't have a metal roof. And all those things at the end. Basically, it's a 200 kilowatt system. It costs $293,000 to put in without incentives. We're throwing in O&M. We have a contract, so we're paying 1% per year, and then that increases over time. And then it's common is to throw in maybe an inverter replacement or some other unforeseen cost that you just kind of want to model in there, and we did that. At year 11 and 21, I threw $10,000 in the cost. Your cash in is basically your electrical savings. In the first year, we calculated we could save 300,000 kilowatt hours of electrical production. And then if we're paying 9 cents a kilowatt hour, that's our cash, basically. And then we model the production to degrade every year, which is common. We degrade it 0.5% a year. As well, in the cost of electricity, we're going to forecast that's going to increase every year 1%. It may or may not. It may be more than that. It may, so it's really unforeseen. Nobody can forecast that, but people do model it that way. So the end result is a graph over time, and you can see on the left your first initial hit, which is $293,000, And then every year there's a horizontal line slightly above the axis. That's your yearly savings. And then that angled line is your projected accumulated savings. I've also put in there the 10,000 twice for the inverters, so that's all mixed in there. So with this system, you get a payback of about 12 years. You end up with $500,000 of cash, extra cash at the end of the 30 years. Your net present value, if you use these discounted cash flow metrics, is $128,000 net present value, above and beyond what it costs. And then your internal rate of return is about 8.8%.
We actually found some federal tax incentives that we were able to apply to this too. That affects that calculation as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly, Patrick. And and the common one out there is that federal tax ITC, which is 30%. And thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act that just passed, it's going to continue at 30%. As well, we're going to throw in what I call MACRs, which is the bonus depreciation. There's some value to that, and that's actually more cash. So when you add that in, what you basically do is you basically take it off of your initial investment. So now my initial investment, less the ITC and the MACRs, is $145,000. So that brings that angled line up, as you can see. So now my break even is less than 6 years, and my accumulated cash is $666,000, which is great, even much better. And then my internal rate of return is 21%, which is awesome in terms of an investment. So that's our baseline scenario. And critical to us are that it's on a metal roof and it's a direct attached railless system. So now let's get into what Greg has been talking about. If you're using rails and you're not on a metal roof and have higher system costs, what's that impact on your financial analysis? So you'll have more material, more labor. You may be flashing on asphalt or membrane. So from the analysis we've done, a very, very rough approximation is I'm going to model in 30 cents a watt. So if we change that internal investment now, we're talking $353,000 internal investment. With the ITC, you end up with $175,500 as your net. That brings that line down now. So now you're over 7 years to break even. It was less than 6. Now it's over 7. Your cash has now gone down from $666,000 to $617,000, and your IRR is gone down from 21% to 16%. And you can see that line is there where you used to be. Now you've fallen below that. So really the point of this is that the lever you have of your initial cost does have an impact on the life of the cash flow and your lifetime financial benefits of putting a system in. So it's pretty important to really look at all that. Look at all the costs and see the benefits of installing on a metal roof, installing railless versus rail, and looking at all your other costs. So this illustrates that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is what Greg mentioned, which was, what if, with a metal roof, you never worry about having to do any repairs or replace the roof, but you do with other type of roof types. So let's look at that. So I modeled in that year 20, you're going to have to replace your roof. And, I sort of put a ballpark cost in there, but what that really does is that wipes out your accumulated cash pretty much. It may not bring it to zero exactly, but that sets you back. And then now you're starting over again, and you can see in this chart how much, really how much cash you lose by having that possibility that you may never have to do it. You may have to do it at 15 years. You may have to do it at 20 years. But that risk is out there. It's a much greater risk with a lot of roof types other than metal roofs.
So it seems like at that point, if you're going to have to start worrying about a re-roof, you're kind of hitting the brakes on regaining your money at that point.
Right. Well, you're resetting. I mean, it basically resets all the money you've gained into that. You just lose all that money. And it's not about the cost of re-roofing. It's about what's the cost of taking the system off, putting it back on, and then your lost opportunity. I mean, for a couple months, you're not making power, so you're losing a couple months production. So if you add all that up, that's a serious expense I think, Greg, you mentioned that nobody tends to model that.
No.
People just kind of don't dance around these issues of you're putting an asset, a 30-year asset on a 20-year asset. And so if you just think about that alone, it makes you think that, what a sounder investment is to put solar on a metal roof. One last thing I'd like to add, Patrick and Greg, is that the Metal Construction Association has published 3 great papers on solar on metal roofs. We were involved with those papers, but it just goes over a lot of aspects of putting solar on metal, and it's free to download. You can go to metalconstruction.org, which is their website, and get it free there. There's 3 papers.
That's going to do it for today's solar discussion. Like Greg and Mark said, when it comes to adding rooftop solar, nothing compares to the longevity of a metal roof. Who wants to deal with the price tag associated with re-roofing when you've added a solar array that still has a lot of life left in it? Then there's the issue of railed versus railless and the savings associated with weight, logistics, and labor when you go the railless route. And don't forget to do your research on the various tax incentives that may help offset the initial cost of your system. Thanks very much for stopping by the Metal Roofing Academy. Stay tuned for more opportunities to expand your metal roofing knowledge. Hope to see you next time, everybody.